Thank you very much for downloading this episode of Happy Times and Places, which was recorded before certain newspaper revelations about cast members of this story. Welcome to this omnibus edition of Happy Times and Places, a pathetically, optimistically world-viewed podcast in which I, Toby Haydock, try to be positive throughout whilst commentating upon a Doctor Who story and trying to guess what my special guest's favourite things about it are.
Hello, my name's Jenny. I'm BlueBox99 on Twitter. Toby's very kindly asked me to join in his podcast where he has to guess which moments I've picked from a Doctor Who story. So I've loved Doctor Who since I was very little in the 70s, and the story I've chosen, because quite a lot of other stories had been taken up already for the classic Who ones, so I thought I'd do a new Who. So my favourite new Who from the first series, which was Christopher Eccleston's series, is Bad Wolf, Parting of the Ways. I thought it was amazing because the special effects were just unreal to me, because seeing it in the 70s and seeing it now, it's just incredible, the difference. And I love both, but it just mind-blowing to see the special effects that they had created for all the episodes in the new series. It's incredible.
Well, thank you, Jenny. Who's afraid of the big bad wolf? I've fired this up on iPlayer, which means I might have trouble with credits at the end. Just keep an eye out for that. For those of you who've been regular followers of this podcast/videocast, it's a running thing that will pay off in the season finale. It largely just means that I'll just be annoyed with the credits again. It's not quite as sophisticated as what we're about to see. Anyway, you may have it on shiny disc or as a microchip inserted into your brain. However you want to do it. It's about to play the recap from the season that has built up to this. So I'm going to press play in 3, 2, 1... So this Bad Wolf, the penultimate episode of the comeback season of Doctor Who. What a time to be alive! And this felt like, obviously, this was a surprise actually to have a. Oh, okay. We knew it was going to be called Bad Wolf. That was announced in the Radio Times, and I remember getting messages from a couple of mates going, "Oh, have you seen the title for the penultimate episode?" Because I think that was held back until that publication. And so we knew this had been building to something, because I'd spent quite a lot of time on forums. I don't go on them anymore. Life has changed a little bit. So are forums, I think. But it was a real lifeline between the episodes, and there was something terribly exciting about seeing what people had to say, and there were a few spoiler-free reviews early in the season as well. I remember Jason Arnott did very, very good ones that gave you a taste, because you were consuming it all. And somebody had heard Big Bad Wolf being said by the Mox of Balhoun, and I think had mentioned it and said, "Oh, what's this?" And people picked up on it very quickly, and so I'd noticed that. I can't say I'd necessarily noticed the line in the episode myself, particularly. Can't remember now. But then, of course, the scene between Gwyneth and Rose in the next story, in The Unquiet Dead, you went, okay, this is something to look out for. So this was now, and we knew this is very much of the time, isn't it? Big Brother was absolutely massive, and Doctor Who, for me, growing up, had not been the thing that cool people liked. Big Brother was mainstream, was huge. So the idea that my geeky little show was now big enough that it could be sort of associated with the thing that everybody watched and everybody talked about. Of course, everyone was watching and talking about Doctor Who. Suddenly, it was like, that's such a great gag to start with. This was huge. This was like Doctor Who has rightfully pushed its way back into where it had been when I was born and when I was aware of it as a tiny child, and that had been lost somehow. And of course, the wilderness years when it was a bit of a joke. Doctor Who, in the space of 12, 13 weeks on telly, was suddenly going, no, we are embedded in popular culture so much so that we can invoke the things that everybody. And I watched Big Brother. It was a guilty pleasure. I got bored of it fairly quickly. I think we watched the first 3 series. But I'm no snob. I can watch, popular culture and reality TV and Question Time. I used to say I could watch Big Brother and Question Time. I actually watch neither now because I don't even know if Big Brother's on, but Question Time's gone off as well. Things have changed. We call this New Who. It's actually 15 years ago. The cultural landscape has changed. My God, I've been through lots of changes in my personal life. I haven't seen this for ages, but it was so exciting. Patterson Joseph was an actor that was very. He's still around, but I'd seen him in loads of plays at the Royal Exchange here. He was the sort of actor that you're going, oh yeah, he's somebody who should be in Doctor Who. So it seemed quite right that he was coming for the season finale. He was very current, and he went on to do some big stuff and has sustained a marvellous career. Really good actor, and I've seen him on stage. He's got such a presence, so of course The Weakest Link, and this is the sort of thing that everybody watched. So again, Doctor Who. This is the Beatles in the chase, isn't it? Is it not quite? I don't know. But the android, what a good joke, and it felt like affirmation from the mainstream. But of course, Doctor Who, when it is part of the mainstream, also satirises the mainstream and brings its own special daft magic to the mainstream. And Captain Jack hadn't been in it long, and he just suddenly fitted into the whole thing. Remember when Captain Jack was announced, I was like, I don't really like the sound of him. I want Doctor Who and a companion. I don't want this. I don't know who this guy is. And John Barrowman had associations with musical theatre, and was just like, that doesn't seem right. And of course, he immediately came in and fitted like a glove. I think whenever anything is announced, it worries me. So I'm not necessarily speaking for all Doctor Who fans when I say I wasn't that bothered about it, because Captain Jack as a concept was announced very, very early on, even though it's a late edition. There was a call that they did want to show his bottom, I think, and I'm glad Doctor Who doesn't do nudity, and I think the joke works without you seeing his bottom, and it's got a very cheeky charm. He's so charismatic and funny, isn't he? Now Jo Joyner, I love in this. She's a terrific actress, and funnily enough, it's going to sound like one of my. I'd not been very well, and I met a mate of mine, an actor called Francis McGee, who's one of my oldest acting friends, in town, and we went for a drink, and I was really poorly, actually. My skin was, I'd get very bad psoriasis. Not long before this, and he'd been in a thing called No Angels with her, and actually on the way to the pub we bumped into her, and he said, oh, this is Jo Joyner. I was like, oh, hello, blah, blah. It was just and then I think literally 2 weeks later it was announced that she was going to be in the Doctor Who season finale, and I felt like Doctor Who was following me around. I've always sort of felt that, and I know that's purely my imagination. It's just that, we see patterns in the things that we think about all of the time, and I sort of think about Doctor Who all of the time. So yes, so of course we don't actually know how they've arrived. So we've got this brilliant flashback with Rose just reaching out. It's the economy with which this stuff is done. It doesn't take it, doesn't hang about throwing us into the story. Sweet little Linda, he's quite mean. He's and that's him in a reflection, isn't it? He's slightly distorted there. It's a very clever shot. I love Linda with a Y. Is she going to be one of my favourite things? She might be, although there's that scene in the next episode. We'll take that when we get to it. And Russell T Davies isn't putting Big Brother in to take the mickey out of it. A lot of people had their cake and ate it with Big Brother, is that certainly comics, it was a thing that we'd all go on stage and slag off and yet all watch religiously. And it is, it's a very interesting concept, Big Brother, which as a societal experiment is quite fascinating. I'd be interested to take part in something where I lived in a house and was monitored every day. I just wouldn't want it to be broadcast. So the idea of how you rub along with people and is very interesting. Of course, it's great for Doctor Who, but to turn everyday competition like this, a sort of a silly game show, into a deadly thing is a very Doctor Who thing. It's a telephone wire that can kill you. It's a murderous daffodil. It's it's a killer gooseberries, or all of those things that Doctor Who has had. That's Seeds of Doom. Billy Piper is so good in this, as are all the contestants. Most of whom have a little story about, I have to say, which just goes to show the brilliance of the casting of this. Sebastian Armesto, who was got 2 or 3 lines, is a superb actor. This must have been one of his first jobs. I've seen him on stage at the National. He's since starred in Broadchurch, and he's been in one of the Star Wars films. Dominic Burgess there as Agarax is in America. He was in The Good Place playing an Australian. He was also in Feud, so he must have nipped over to America and started to make a career there. Karen Winchester as Fitch, I think, is brilliant. It's not a very big part, and you can and she invests it with so much. Her emotion is brilliant, especially in the face of Rose's, to them, very odd reaction. And I seem to remember calling one of the commentaries for this, because these are the days when Doctor Who was, I think there were about like 9 commentaries an episode, a red button one, a DVD one. No, there was a couple anyway. So there's definitely a market for more Doctor Who commentaries, especially with people that aren't in the episodes in question, Toby. But I remember Russell T Davies praising Karen Winchester as Fitch and saying, "Oh, we'll definitely have her back because she's good." She never came back. That's the acting profession for you. You could be good, and the bosses can think you're fantastic, but then there's not an opportunity, or they forget, or whatever. She turned up in an episode of The Bill not long afterwards, and was equally good in that, playing a sort of generic role of the week and doing a lot more with it. So I haven't seen her in anything recently. I haven't looked her up. I don't prepare for these because I put all my preparatory work into the other podcasts I do. Plug Too Much Information, which takes forever to do, and Indefinable Magic are my other 2 podcasts. Do check them out. She's really good. This is crying real tears. Good performance. And Rose's reaction is brilliant. And Rose doesn't realise she's condemned somebody to death. But she's great because she's showing compassion, even though she only thinks she's kicked somebody off a game, and she doesn't quite understand. She's so good, Billy Piper. I think sometimes I'm talking purely for myself, take the core ingredients of Doctor Who for granted. This is such a great idea. It's a killer game show, Rose. That's what you're in. And actually, do you know what? Probably a floor manager on a killer game show would be just that sort of cool and dispassionate. It's a ruthless industry, And it's interesting because I thought of Patterson Joseph, because he's such a dignified man and an actor of a lot of presence. In fact, he was playing somebody called Roderick. I thought was quite interesting. It wasn't the sort of part I expected him to turn up in. So yeah, Sebastian Armesto. I've seen him on stage at the National. I've seen his Willie. I mean, he was attached to it. It wasn't a solo performance. It didn't give its own performance in a play at the National called A Woman Killed with Kindness, that also had Gilbert Wynne from the Crotons in it. He said, how do you remember the plays that you've seen at the National Theatre, Toby? Which members of the cast of Doctor Who were in it? Liz White was in it too. I went to see it with my friend Shauno, who I haven't seen for ages because I'm in lockup. Hello, Shauno. I'm thinking about my friends today, actually. People that I haven't seen for a year. And I suppose maybe the idea that we're cooped up. I really love the performance of Jamie Bradley in the middle as he is absolutely the sort of person that would be in Big Brother, and that false smile that he does, and that's very clever editing because they've gone, that's a very good piece of acting. He does that sort of that smile of relief that it's not him, and then his face immediately becomes like really sincere. He's pitch perfect, and I haven't seen him in anything else. And he's perfect casting, and without it being a comic performance, it's a very comic performance because he's so sincere. I think if you wanted to encapsulate reality television in one sort of personality type, it would be him, because he's like so friendly, but actually you know that he'd stab you in the back in a minute's time. So I salute you, Jamie Bradley. Somebody did send me a link once to something. Was he selling vegetables? Have I imagined that? Growing vegetables? I don't know. But, of course, once the reveal is there, I do question in retrospect their behaviour. Now, obviously, they're playing it as if she's going to die because we sort of have cottoned on now. But I think some of the behaviour prior to this, I think you've got to do some mental gymnastics to retcon there. But he does that. He does the serious stuff too. I'm a Jamie Bradley fan. I don't know anything about him apart from some window boxes. I don't know. I don't research this bit. But somebody sent me a link once because that's what happens to me. I'm the sort of person, somebody goes, I've found something out about the Doctor Who person, I'll send it to Toby. I love these two. And they don't have... It's interesting because I remember reading Russell at the time saying about the male programmer and the female programmer is that I wanted to give people big stories and not give them names because... there's something to be said about sort of supporting characters. We don't even know their names, and yet we watch them sort of fight and die. Except, of course, he does have a name. He's called David Pavel, but not in the credits. He's just credited as male programmer. I'd seen Joe Stone Fewings in a production of Henry VI that the RSC did, and he was... Not everybody was audible, I have to say, and he was very, very good playing one of the supporting parts, and I'd noted him, and I think also because he's from Hereford, which is not far, or he went to Hereford Cathedral School, which is not far from where I grew up. So I was quite pleased to see him turning up again. I was sort of like, oh, he's followed me from Henry VI, except nobody else from that production of Henry VI was in that season of Doctor Who, so not really. But he was one of the ones I noticed in it. And he's excellent. Both of them are Nisha and Nayar, the other programmer, had been, I believe, an extra in Paradise Towers. So is a connection with the... it's one of the Kangs, so a connection with the previous iteration of Doctor Who. He's like this. He's I like it when because Eccleston is unlike any of... Well, Tom Baker had a sort of obtuse danger about him, but there's something, genuinely sort of hard, genuinely nails, and a bit. You get a bit of bother from the Ninth Doctor, and so I quite like it when he brings that aspect of him to the fore, because it's one that perhaps his Doctor has more than any other. Oh, and of course we haven't even mentioned Trini and Susanna. And these work because they're deadly robots, and that's a very naughty but a good joke. And again, I'm not really a south of the belly button humour kind of guy, but that's cheeky. That's funny. It's great. Um, um, oh dear, she didn't even get it. Poor old Colleen has been zapped. Jenna Russell, of course. Jenna Russell as the floor manager is accidentally missed off the credits next episode, which I would be livid about. Went on to be the other Michelle Fowler in EastEnders, but also sang the theme tune to Red Dwarf. There we are. Roderick's horrible, isn't he? Bad Wolf. Oh, we've got to talk about Bad Wolf as well. Well, which was just a sort of theme thread through the series for the viewer who's keeping an eye. Oh, we do get a flashback to some of the Bad Wolf moments, even to a bit that Rose wouldn't have seen. But that's and of course this is a first, really, because I know the Key to Time season in Classic Who had a sort of umbrella theme, and there was the East-based bit in season 18. But this was, I think, the fact that the stories weren't multi-parters, apart from the 3 two-parters that we got, but it was largely single episodes, which made it more like, the American stuff that we'd had than Doctor Who. Doctor Who was 4-part serials, was six-part serials. So when it was going to be, it's all single stories, there was a feeling of, are they going to be as developed as much as old Doctor Who? As of course, actually, you can pack much more in, and there's much more, there's still as detailed storytelling, but done with economy. But what you do get instead of that is you get threads weaved through the whole season within those individual stories that are there for the regular, that reward the regular viewer, but hopefully don't put off the casual viewer. And that's the balance. Although, of course, as Doctor Who took off and became popular, as the Doctor Who guy in the school playground, because I've never hidden, I've never hidden my perversion. I was the one that people spoke to. That other parents spoke to and go, oh, I've heard, this is happening. People picked up on this stuff really, really pretty quickly, and not. I wasn't surprised to see it on forums, but when mums are telling me in the playground, I remember one coming up and saying, I know who's going to be the new Doctor Who. It's going to be David Morrissey. And I'm thinking, no, that's obviously, it's called The Next Doctor. That's you haven't got some insider information that you're letting me know. But people thought, and people were really excited. Ordinary people, and by that I mean non-Doctor Who fans. I went off on a segue slightly before I finished my Trinny and Susanna point. I think even now, and certainly in 10 years' time, nobody bar the likes of us will necessarily remember Trinny and Susanna, but looking at it there, that doesn't matter at all. Does any of it matter? The weakest link, it could just be it's a quiz show where if people get questions wrong, they get killed. You don't have to know who Anne Robinson is, or that's a great wheeze that I forget sometimes. Anne Robinson's been in Doctor Who, and the weakest link was huge. And this is a big change for the Doctor, isn't it? Because the Doctor is aware of a lot of this popular culture stuff, whereas sometimes I think the Doctor has been portrayed as very aloof and very intellectual and a gourmand and in touch with the higher things, and that sort of appeals to me because for various reasons, not all of which I think are necessarily good, and I would be cautious of a Doctor that watch soap operas and things like that. That's a good joke. Never paid for my license, although you should, Doctor. The TV license is important because it subsidises things that for the whole of society that wouldn't be commercially sustainable things like programs for the deaf and that sort of thing, which should be paid for by all of society in order to make it a fairer one. But let's not do the TV license lecture. I only do that because Defund the BBC is predictably, boringly, terrifyingly trending on Twitter as I speak. She's great, isn't she? And I think Russell has called her one of the best actresses in the country. And she, obviously, this is before she went into EastEnders. And in fact, I did a radio play around this time with an ex of hers, who's a very good actor, but I won't say who because that stuff might not be out there. Who said, "Oh, yeah, they were still good friends, and they'd been together for quite a while." He said, "Oh, my ex has just done Doctor Who," and then said who it was, and I met her the other day. So, all coming together. Yes, he's got a really lovely quality. The way he sort of approaches her here, Joe Stone Fewings as the male programmer, and I think this is a brilliant visual and a fantastic idea. It's totally sci-fi. The controller is a very sci-fi word character, but this idea, this information, this part of the plot could be done in any way, really. But what we have is a human mind since a child strapped into a mainframe, who has a sort of anemic albino sort of thing that has been done by being, indoors and strapped up, and it's Martha Cope, who's excellent. Since had the pleasure of working with, she's tip top. She's a nice woman, and is the daughter of Kenneth Cope from Randall and Hopkirk, deceased, and the Doctor Who story Warrior's Gate, who's a bit of a legend. But Martha's great, and I think really good. And that counting down, because her mind is on a thing and she's doing her job, but also she's resisting. And there's a thing there that's a very Doctor Who thing about she's strapped into the computer and her mind has been hijacked by the bad guys. But actually what she does is a thing involving her latent humanity and individualism just breaking through to do the thing that she does a little bit later, which is a very Doctor Who thing. In the face of all this technology, all this satire, all this adventure, it's about going, humanity and an individual can do a thing. And this is being set up. Obviously, there's a scene involving Linda here later. Linda with a Y. Half the world's too fat and half the world's too thin. There's such economy in that, and it's absolutely true. Isn't that extraordinary? Have you noticed I'm quite a big fan of this era? This was such a time to be alive. So this is where I would have resisted slightly, is the idea of the Doctor. I didn't finish that thought either. That, the Doctor watching a program about bears. I'm thinking, no, he should be going to the theatre and watching ballet. And actually, I was wrong. And like Russell T Davies, you can. I remember when I interviewed him for Who's Round, I said to him that he was a populist intellectual, and he quite liked that. And I sort of stand by that. In that he's a very, very smart, very, very clever man, and a very learned and intellectual man. And he's read all of the classics, but he also takes great delight in popular culture. And I think sometimes, don't worry, Agarex, you're going to have a great career in America. And I think sometimes, I've resisted the part of me that likes something that is entertaining for entertaining's sake. And certainly as a comic early on, I'd go, that joke's important. That's an important joke. The most important thing about it, if it was a joke that was satirical or made a point, I'd go, that's the most important thing. No. And now I look at comics who pat themselves on the back for, making a point, but make it to the three people that they're making laugh. I think, actually, no, the comic's job is on a Friday night in a busy comedy club is to make as many people laugh as possible. If you can smuggle clever stuff and satire and all that sort of thing into it, then brilliant, well done. But the main job, and it's the same with Doctor Who, that this has satire on it. That this makes a point, and this has jokes in it and all that sort of thing. But the main thing it has to do is to be a thoroughly entertaining 40 odd minutes for the whole family, and that's not easy. And if you can do that and also satirize things and make a point and blah 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 blah, then all well and good. But your first purpose is to make something that makes people sit up and go, oh, this is just really exciting, and I'm really looking forward to, and I'm going to really enjoy this. And there's such an energy to this, and such a sense of humour, but it never loses sight of the fact that it needs to shock you, and it needs to make you worry for your heroes. And that happens throughout. And as a yes, so and so it's all very well having high aims, but you also have to appeal to as many people as possible to be. There's nothing wrong with that. And Doctor Who should be that. Doctor Who is not a niche. Doctor Who is successful not because it's a niche culty thing. Yeah, okay, the niche culty bit is when you find out everything about Paul Erickson, who wrote the Ark. That's when you get niche and culty, and it allows you to do that. But Doctor Who is successful because, despite the fact it's a ridiculous idea that does in a genre that is supposed to be one that doesn't appeal to a broad range of people, is something recognised by families all over the world and across generations. And as Frank Richards said to George Orwell, if you think that's easy, you try it. So it's a good lesson in not being snobby, I think, is what I'm saying. And I'm sort of saying that to me because I think I sometimes worry about admitting that I like things that are popular, and yet actually Doctor Who itself is popular. Although again, I got over Big Brother pretty quickly and haven't seen it since. And how the television landscape has changed, and in fact, you could do this now. He's so horrible the way he says you've lost. You could do this because everybody watched the same handful of channels, so everybody would have known the weakest link. If you did it on a quiz now, that's on this time on BBC Two. I don't know what quiz is on this time on BBC Two. This is brilliant. This whole thing is brilliant. I remember my agent at the time saying, God, she thought when this happened that they'd killed her off. She thought, oh my God, of course they have. They're not going to get Billie Piper for more than a year. That's great. They've built up this thing. And she genuinely... So that's how successfully done it was, because agents are pretty cynical. And I remember loads of people who were desperate for Doctor Who to be grown up, and I've been a bit like that in my time, saying that Captain Jack swore at that point and told her to F off. No, he says back off, and you'd get people on forums go, no, it definitely said F off. Like, there's a lot of people working on this. They're not going to let the F word through. Sam Callis as the guard is an actor who'd had a decent stint in the Bill as a sort of recurring. Was he Linda Bellingham's priest's son or something? Anyway, he wasn't just a one-off. He was a recurring sort of supporting, not villain, but part of a villainous family. And he was in Ultimate Force with Ross Kemp. Oh, and then he went back to the Bill as a regular, but as a sergeant. But after this, so even the guy playing the guard is a good actor who I suspect was going from one job to the other. It's very well cast, this period of Doctor Who. And there's no necessarily reason why it would have been. And I remember Rob Shearman said, there was an attitude of people thinking that the Doctor Who coming back was going to be rubbish, but it was well served by the acting profession. So whether that's, I love this bit, the Doctor's sort of call to arms, and Captain Jack is the sort of modern day brigadier. He does, although the Doctor gets pretty tasty there, but Captain Jack leads the physical stuff. That Captain Jack does the stuff that we sometimes think the Doctor wouldn't do himself. Although Eccleston is not with a gun. I love he's a sort of hapless middle manager, a very amiable sort of office assistant, but doing a terrible job. He's a bit like the cultural commentator Douglas Murray facially. Actually, that's very interesting. I was thinking now I've got to choose my favourite things, of course. What is it? Is it 2 per episode or is it 3 per episode? Oh, I can't remember my own rules. I love the I love the bit when he asks to put the gun down. It's a really lovely performance. The performances in this are so good, but I have to be very careful not to just go on about the acting. What's her name? I don't know. Oh, I mean, it's such a... Cause, yeah, Russell T Davies has a cheeky energy and a twinkly humour. But there's so much darkness as well. Well, I'm just off the back of watching It's a Sin. Do I look like an out-of-bounds sort of guy? And he's good at the action stuff as well. I mean, that's the thing. I think sometimes when I think of Doctor Who's, you think of some directors or writers who are good at action and some who are good at the sort of thoughtful, prosaic stuff and boom, 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 boom. I mean, Russell T Davies does really sort of have it all. When you think, oh, well, yeah, he does the sort of cheeky light stories, and then you go, oh, God, no, he doesn't. He does stuff that's got some really grim stuff. And we've just off the back of It's a Sin, which if you haven't seen, you must. And, you come away from that going, God, that was so... you just... Yeah, now back off. There's a real... Yeah, Doctor, you are not afraid to make people accountable for their trains running on time sort of thing. Look at the lighting there. Because, of course, his power's down. And this gives her the opportunity to talk, which is... it's all built into the script very cleverly. But look at that ultraviolet light. It's absolutely gorgeous. And this is where she gets to show her humanity. But, yeah, it's a sin. You come away thinking, God, I've just had my guts ripped out by that dark drama about a terrible time. And then you think about it again and you go, but it was really funny all the way through. And that's life. If you want it to be life, it's a series of disasters. But so you've got to try and make it funny. You got to. I think the controller is probably going to be, because she's only in this. She's only in this episode. It's one of the great one-episode performances in Doctor Who. There are a few. Barry Justice in episode 3 of The Massacre. Some others that, and who? Oh no, of course. Now we knew the Daleks were coming back because they had been in the trailer the previous week. Although I actually did have a friend who's not a Doctor Who fan, but he always refused to watch the next week. And I know some Doctor Who fans do as well, but none of my friends. Oh yes, so Captain Jack and the Doctor have a great dynamic. I love the way even that she holds her feet. That she puts her feet at an angle because she's a bit sort of awkward and shy and embarrassed. And of course he hasn't killed her. So yeah, Rose is still, and actually that cock of the foot thing is very clever technical acting as well, because it shows that she's doing the same thing that she was doing when she disappeared. So it's not just a sweet character touch. That is a very technically smart piece of acting. And television acting is, it can defeat the best actors in the world if they're not good at the technical side of it. The reason actors like Peter Barkworth were so good was because they were meticulous technicians of the craft. And the modern day actor has to be very, very good because there's much less continuity. It's not like a stage play. You have to do so much more remembering. And she gives her life. Oh, it gets me. But what a brilliant design and concept and idea that controller is. And so and this is actually the only time we get to see her in sort of proper lighting. So to actually get to see what she looks like. And of course, so then this it enables us to have the reveal of the Daleks without saying it's the Daleks. Even though we know it's, you could see them in the reflection. Oh, shout out to Joe Ahern, the director, and I love that. I know it was first done in Remembrance, really, the sort of skeletal thing, but they really take it and run with it this year. And I remember when I think it was it on one of the Davies Pavel, yeah, but male programmer. But you couldn't have had Davies Pavel and female programmer. That would have been a bit hard on her because they are a double act. But the skeletal thing, I think there was a documentary before Rose, wasn't there? Narrated by David Tennant. And I think that was the first time I saw... there was a clip from Dalek which showed the X-ray extermination effect, and it's such a brilliant effect. Those sort of little touches that were way sort of beyond the capability of Doctor Who as it had been when it had disappeared. Although, as I say, the remembrance effect is very good. But, this is the next level. And the scale of this, and I love the vocal music. I'm not a musician, so forgive me, but that automatically gives it the epic. And look at that shot. That is absolutely extraordinary. This was such an exciting thing, and to have them reflected in the monitor, that the shooting of it is amazing. Oh my goodness, I mean, epic. And he's absolutely terrified. Daleks, we still haven't. So I'm in two minds now, interestingly, because obviously seeing the Dalek at the end of Boomtown made you go, oh, this is really exciting, but actually it does kind of blow this reveal. But that's not new to modern Doctor Who. There's a picture of a Cyberman in the Radio Times in the first week of the invasion, and they don't appear till the end of episode 4 a month later. So it's not just a thing of modern television. It's about enticing the viewer. We call things spoilers now, but actually a lot of what a spoiler is an enticement to watch things. If you watch a trailer for any old films, they often, all the Hammer films, the endings are in the trailer. But we didn't see things over and over again. This is a brilliant cliffhanger, and I remember not quite getting it at the time, and I know there's an argument that it should finish here. King Dalek, oh, he's so good. Yeah, that it should end at Rose, I'm coming to get you. Whereas it's the more traditional thing is, well, no, him saying I'm coming to get you means that they go, we're going to invade the Earth, which is the more traditional thing. Earth is about to be invaded. I think it works. I think it would be slightly too abrupt. You're still digesting it here, and also you get this, which is, I mean, these effect shots are magnificent. Now I've got to grab my bat because I don't want the credits to disappear. And I mean, the episode is over, and it's still got so exciting because it doesn't have the shot of the Dalek. The machine gun. This was just so thrilling. And yeah, because there's something about machine guns that are better than laser guns. They're dirty. Look at that pan across. I'm now reviewing the next episode. Oh, and was this Davros? Was this Adam? Oh my goodness! And look, the credits are going beautifully slowly. So you can you can't quite. You have to still be quite quick, but no, I think this. Look, these credits are going at a reasonable speed, and even then, compared to the original Doctor Who credits, they were quite fast. But of course, they had to get more things in. You can't read them now, which I think is a sign of the collapse of civilization as we know it. But there we go. You can't resist progress. Progress. Anyway, we all have our hills to die on, and that is mine. It's a hill with a list of names that are legible. I'm sure I've used that joke before. Sorry if I have. What joke, Toby? It's not a joke. All right, it's not a joke. It's a sort of metaphor. So I've got to choose. I can't remember how many things I'm supposed to choose. Hang on. Is it 2 or is it a 3? Let me just see my rule. 4-parter, 5 things. 6-parter, I'll need 7. Single episode from New Who, 5 things. For multi-parter from New Who, choose 3 things per episode and 1 bonus. 3 things per episode and 1 bonus. So 3 things this week. Well, definitely the Controller, played by Martha Cope. For the reasons I outlined, such a great visual, a very, very good performance, beautiful lighting, the thing about it being, humanity wrapped up in a machine, wrapped up in somebody who has been taken over and controlled by the alien and humanity winning through. The fact that it's just a great sci-fi bit, and it's pretty grim. It's just perfect. It's perfectly done. A Linda with a Y. I've got to choose Linda with a Y. I think she's absolutely delightful. I think I'll choose a bit with her next week as well, because there's just a moment that is absolutely incredible. And I'm thinking, am I going to go for the cheeky sort of humour with Captain Jack? I'm interested in the Big Brother, the Weakest Link, and the Trini and Susanna, because at the time, that was the most exciting stuff, because it was, as I say, Doctor Who smashing into the mainstream. And it doesn't surprise me. I sort of came into this thinking, I suspect that stuff won't be quite so thrilling. It's not as unthrilling as I thought it might be, because it doesn't suffer one jot from our lack of proximity to those things, because he's so good that they work just within the confines of the episode of being a deadly quiz and some funny robots. As I say, I think the Big Brother thing is a slight cheat, because they don't play it like when they get kicked out they're going to die until the moment that happens. And as I say, if you think about what's gone on prior to that, you go, oh, that's a bit. So I think for that reason, I'm not going to choose the Big Brother thing, although the idea of the Doctor in the Big Brother house is such a hoot. And yeah, it's so funny and so smart. And I do like Jamie Bradley's performance within that, but I can't. I don't want to choose. I want to choose something that isn't performance based. I don't think it has to be the cliffhanger. I think it just has to be, the cliffhanger, because it's an extraordinary moment, and the idea, and it's a Doctor hero moment, and it sums up that brilliant Doctor Who we saw so little of, and how Russell T Davies can get to the heart of what the Doctor is about. Brave, daft, scary, hard, soppy, and about to do something impossible because he has to. Yeah. So there we go. Linda with a Y, the Controller, the Cliffhanger. They are my 3 things. What is Jenny at Blue Box 99 choosing?
Okay, here are my answers. So here are my choices, Toby. So the first one from Bad Wolf is, I've got my notes, so forgive me if I'm reading. I'll forget otherwise. The Doctor holds out his hand for Lydia with a Y, and that's to go with him out of the Big Brother house. And that's the moment I wanted her to be a companion. I thought she had such a bubbly personality. She was worried about what people thought of her. And I think the Doctor just made her feel confident. And I wanted her to travel with him. I wanted her to grow in confidence. And I wanted her to be travelling with Rose and the Doctor. I think she would have been a brilliant companion. So that's my first choice. The second one is where Rose runs from the podium after losing the weakest link, and Android just shoots and disintegrates her, just as the Doctor and Jack break through the doors, and he just goes on the ground completely devastated and puts his hand in the dust where Rose had stood, and it's just the total devastation on his face and the anger that's building. So that was an incredible moment. So I just really felt for him at that point. What had happened to Rose? How could she possibly have been killed? So that's my second choice, Toby. My third choice is where the Doctor looks out of Satellite 5 and sees thousands of Dalek ships just appearing, and I think he's just horrified. He just sees the monitor which shows Rose is with the Daleks, and at that point he's just so angry, he's just so annoyed with them, and he thinks to himself, you can just see it in his face, he's not having it anymore. And it's that he breaks into that speech. It's just like, no, because this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to rescue her. I'm going to save Rose Tyler from the middle of the Dalek fleet, and then I'm going to save the Earth. And then, just to finish off, I'm going to wipe every last stinking Dalek out of the sky. Brilliant moment. Love it.
Brilliant. Well, thank you. Well, I think I do get that last one because I said the cliffhanger, but it is it's tied up in that speech really. So I think I'm allowed that, but I'm not allowed Linda with the Y, because she did specify the moment that he holds the hand out, and that is actually quite an important moment. I think so. I'm allowed one of those two, but not both of them. You'll decide which one I'm allowed, and I'm certainly not allowed at the bit where Rose dies, which is of course a brilliant moment. And because I was too busy talking about my old agent, that is such a dramatic moment, and the way that it's shot, and the fact that the guard's got his gun to the Doctor's head, and Captain Jack is shouting and he's threatening them. But that's all background noise because the Doctor, it's sort of focused on the Doctor's devastation. And that's a brilliant piece of direction. The fact that there's so many sort of dramatic moments that could be happening, and it decides to, and it very cleverly, without making you realise it's focusing in on that, just by the fact that it sort of just slightly pushes everything else into the background, it really sucker punches you with the Doctor's grief. And that's key to you thinking that Rose is dead. I think that's done so effectively. There's so many little moments or big moments like that if you pick them apart, you can show why they're a great synthesis of skilled writing, skilled acting, skilled directing, which is what makes these great episodes of Doctor Who so effective. And I have to say, particularly a lot of New Who, where the production seems slightly less compromised because it's using more modern techniques that are easier for us to as a modern audience, that we're not having to overcome quite so much. But it's not to be underestimated because they're making weekly episodic television, in the same way that you make Death in Paradise or Casualty, but you're doing it on a spaceship with thousands of invading roboty cyborgy things, and all of the other stuff that's going on. Oh God, I love Doctor Who, and I love Jenny. And do you know what? I'm going to reveal something. She's I've met her at conventions and spoken to her online. She is such an enthusiastic, thoroughly nice and thoroughly decent person, and she was so worried about what you guys would think because she said Lydia with a Y and not Linda with a Y. But offered to re-record it because she didn't want to have made a mistake. Jenny, it was a slip of the tongue. Of course, everybody knows that it's Linda and not Lydia. But you were doing a thing and speaking to camera and trying to remember your points, and you stumbled over somebody's name. But the fact that she worried about that is a sign of what a sort of lovely and fastidious person that she is. And I don't know her very well. We talk online sometimes and we meet at conventions, and she is always so enthusiastic, so encouraging. She encapsulates everything of what Doctor Who fandom should be. And we sometimes forget because, of course, when you're online and when you're sensitive to criticism. You always look at the people who are being a bit mean, not necessarily to you, but about people you like or about things that you like, and sometimes just mean for the sake of being mean. And the fact that exists is galling and is horrible, and it can spoil your day, even if it's not aimed at you. Well, I've never seen anything other than enthusiasm and enjoyment and sort of creativity emanate from Jenny, which is why I asked her to do this, because it's a reminder that you can fixate on the bad things if you want, but actually there's plenty out there, not just but in Doctor Who fandom and in the enjoyment of Doctor Who, that means you don't have to always get distracted by the malevolent aspects of it. So thanks, Jenny. I hope I haven't betrayed her confidence there. But I think it's, I think it's a sign that you are somebody who wants to do things well and nicely, and you do. So thanks to Jenny.
He's also very kindly said that I could plug a few things. So I love writing, and I've written for a charity book called The Curse of Fanfic, and that's available via Obverse Books. On Twitter it's @ObverseBooks, and it's raising money for Parkinson's UK, so well worth a look at that. The Minister of Chance is also an audio drama that I was involved in 2013, and it's by Dan Freeman, and the weekly episodes are available on a free podcast if you want to have a look at that. So that's @The Minister of Chance and @Sage of the Waves. That's Dan Freeman's Twitter account if you want to follow him. It's well worth following. And there's also an audio drama coming out called Dark Dimension. So it's #Dark Dimension on Twitter. Well worth a look. It's a spin-off of Doctor Who. And there's lots of people involved in that's on Twitter, and it's just going to be good fun. So it's well worth a look. So those are my plugs. So thank you, Toby.
Thanks to you for watching and or listening. I'm not sure whether I'm going to do the next episode now or not. I don't think I should, so I'll probably come back another time. What I'm also vowing to do is not try and end on a sort of opposite send-off, because those happen in teleprograms when somebody has sort of written one and written a series of links that build to a climax. What happens with this is I get to the end and go, now let me think of some appropriate zinger with which to finish off, and I very rarely come up with one, and I always, when I come to the edit, go, that's an awful way to end. Trying to tie it all together or say something appropriate or don't go to I hate it. Well, hello. Parting is such sweet sorrow, but let's try to disprove that as you join me before the parting of the waves. Jenny at Blue Box 99 has nominated this story. You heard from her briefly before, and you'll be hearing from her at the end, where she will be telling me and all of you what her favourite things about this episode are. We've already done Bad Wolf. She's not the only person I've heard from about these two episodes. I have a Patreon page, and I extended the offer to some of the subscribers there to offer their thoughts and or questions on this. So before we go to Partings of the Waves, Pete Adamson, hi Pete, said about Bad Wolf that his favourite moment from Bad Wolf was the scene where the android kills Rose and Eccleston's expression as he touches the dust on the ground while the diegetic sound is drowned out. It is a great moment, and you know what? I was so busy going, and there was some idiot on Gallifrey Base who thought that Captain Jack was swearing at that bit. I was being pernickety about somebody else's opinion or mistake, and in so doing, I missed the beauty of what was going on there, because it is a brilliant scene. It's really well acted, but also the sound and everything, the way that that's done, is such a brilliant moment. And I should have given that more heed than getting bogged down in the pernickety details. And that is a lesson that I think Doctor Who fans, as a rule, need to learn. And, I have to put my hand up and go, and I am not immune, and I still haven't learned that lesson, because I still do it, and a little part of me despises me for so doing. It's quite a big part of me. Now, a couple of people, Nathan Morse. I can do some of the questions during the thing, but Ian Key says he loved the link to the game shows in Bad Wolf. I don't think the version of Big Brother on here isn't that. It's not far removed from what it would become. I didn't get that far, but yeah, that doesn't surprise me. Are there any other deadly game shows you'd like to see in Doctor Who? I mean, did the Celestial Toymaker die for nothing? If you give Blind Man's Buff and Snakes and Ladders, no. But TV game shows, I'm sure there are some. But I haven't watched a game show in a while. And yeah, Dan, is that what I've got? Okay. Okay, yeah, and I've got some. Well, no, let's open with this because we haven't had a long track from Jenny at the beginning. Dan Rebelato, who was a guest on this podcast earlier, he chose and brilliantly eulogized the Ribos operation. Dan says, you may have seen an interview with Russell T Davies recently about his new TV serial, It's a Sin, in which he claims it's the first time he's dealt with the subject of AIDS and HIV. This interested me, says Dan, who is a playwright and a clever man. Because I've always thought that The Parting of the Ways was emotionally his great AIDS script, not Rose losing her doctor, or the doctor's body riddled with a fatal infection, but the moment where Rose returns as Bad Wolf, eyes on fire, and everybody lives, and you have that montage of the dead and wounded waking up, opening their eyes, standing on their feet, including the very pre-AIDS polymorphously perverse Captain Jack. In terms of its structure of feeling, its yearning fantasy, a wish fulfillment that feels like it comes from Russell T Davies's generational experience of living through the awful 1980s and early 90s when AIDS wreaked its devastation. What I absolutely adore about that two-parter is the way RTD gets us from the superb silliness of the Big Brother opening to the battle heroism of the end of part one to the almost metaphysical scale of Bad Wolf. And the fact that Rose is absorbing and channeling the heart of the TARDIS makes it feel like Russell T Davies is channeling the heart of Doctor Who as a utopian force for hope, renewal, recovery, and survival that speaks not just to the story, but to the stigma and shame of AIDS and all the public and media hostility that went with it 20 years earlier. And with that, the cleverest things that are about to be said during this broadcast have been dispensed with. I'm not going to promise anything as erudite as that, but I might be able to tell you what that actor was from. But I will leave Dan's words hanging in the air because as I'm recording this, It's a Sin is currently being talked about in parks and offices and on Zoom calls all over the country because of the incredible impression that it has made. And I hadn't thought about it in those terms, but Dan's commentary is fascinating. So look, let's go down. Let's go down a notch in intellectualism now, as I exhort you to press play in 3, 2, 1. I'm watching on iPlayer, so we get a little bit of the a little bit of last week's. A reminder, although this is, of course, a very, very different episode. You know, loads of the characters from the first episode from Bad Wolf do not make it through. And those that do are in a very different... We're now in a sort of siege battle mentality where we were in a sort of perverse game show mystery thing. So it's great how it's a game of two halves. This is the first season finale since Doctor Who came back, and the first regeneration. Dan's tract was full of spoilers, but if the first time you're experiencing Parting of the Ways is with me talking over to it, you deserve everything you get. Alexa, Volume 4. It's slightly loud, but my Alexa, I have the Corporal Jones of Alexas. She will respond very shortly. There we go, you see. So let's see if the Daleks like it up 'em. So it's funny because the Daleks, of course, the Daleks weren't going to be. Look at that special effects shot. The Daleks were not going to be in this series. would this have been any different without them? Do you know what? Yes, it would. And I mean, I like the Daleks. But again, because they're so familiar, I like to think I'm probably more the sort of person that gets excited by Return of the Macra because, I'm a bit of a connoisseur. No, there is something primal about the excitement of seeing the Daleks. And I don't think any other creature could have given this the sense of climax that it has. That, the sheer weight of history. And of course, but most people watching this wouldn't have had that weight of history with the Daleks. So well done, Doctor Who, for establishing the Daleks with one episode and a sole Dalek as a force whose return was going to be an extraordinary thing. The design is great. I wasn't sure I'd like the big ears. They're not. I know they're not ears, but they look like ears. They're where ears are. Because the movie Daleks have those, and I always think they look a bit. They don't quite work on the movie Daleks for me. It's almost like, oh, you're doing it big because you can, because it's a big screen, but it's not there. And yet they work better on these sort of chromy tank Daleks and the rivets and everything. That's such a great updating of the design. I'm just reminded of the DVD extra where is it a DVD extra where they get Raymond Cusick, who was a very clever man who designed the Daleks, and I think they said, well, what we'll do is we'll get him and we'll show him the new Daleks, and he'll be so proud of his work. And he just went, well, it's a bit of a dog's dinner. I can see everybody trying really, really hard, and him not perhaps being as effusive and gracious as they'd hoped he would be. Bless him. He's the intensity of Eccleston's Doctor and the hauntedness. You can tell that he's so great at telling us that whatever went on before we saw him. Was scarred him, and of course, I mean, we'd had the announcement that he was going, which in retrospect, I think was probably a good thing. Actually, leave him wanting more. I think a sense that we didn't get everything that this Doctor promised us is quite good, in the way that I sort of perversely enjoy the fact that there are missing episodes, and somehow think I appreciate Doctor Who more because there are bits of it that I can't have. There's nothing like unrequited love. I mean, the one who never said yes lives on as an eternal possibility, whereas the one who did, after the initial excitement has died down, can only ever be, become normality. So now I think the Doctor's confrontation with the Emperor Dalek is the last stuff that Eccleston shot, wasn't it? And oh my God, how many things did we think that was? I was on forums all week, everybody going, well, it's definitely Adam. And it's just a big Dalek. It's just the Emperor Dalek. We've never encountered this guy in this iteration of Doctor Who before, and we don't know if it's the same one as was in Evil of the Daleks. He looks totally different, so probably not. And that one blew up. It's a bigger Dalek than all the other Daleks. So it needs, it's an individual, a big bad that the Doctor can face off. Yeah, I love the way the Daleks back off there. I remember a friend of mine texted me, I think, saying that's a brilliant moment, and it shows the Doctor's power. And that's a great visual, the Emperor of the Daleks. And again, this is. This is the revival of a show that, when it left us, couldn't do this sort of thing, and I'm not sure I envisaged after Rose with its rather coy approach to death. I don't think we see anyone die, do we? and Autumn's in a shopping centre. It's very well done, but it's it's people in costumes in a shopping centre. It's the Yeti on the loo in Tooting Bec. It's the it's the Autumn's at H&M. The idea that we'd be on a spaceship with floating Daleks and a giant Dalek. We weren't necessarily sure that was going to happen. The way they marshalled the resources here is great, and seeing the Daleks out of focus in the back. Joe Ahern, the director. It's his last credit on the show, and he deserves I think a lot of thanks for bringing that sort of cinematic quality and the sense of urgency and the sense of drama that this season has, particularly its sort of notable sort of battle episodes. But again, rather than just go, oh yeah, the Daleks are pepper pot Nazis, Russell T Davies has introduced the idea of blasphemy, and he tries to psychoanalyze them without getting too highfalutin about it, and he makes it add to the drama, but also that idea of them hating their own existence is somebody bringing a plausible reality to to the troll under the bridge, which is, but without making it mawkish or sentimental or hold up the story. It just gives it an extra layer, an extra reality. That bit with his head at the TARDIS door and the shooting. This is the season finale. This is the end of the Doctor, and we're all wondering. I mean, I spent the whole thing, watching the trailer, going, "So is that?" And there's a bit where he's surrounded later on. You go, "Well, that must be the bit where he, gets killed and regenerates." So there's a bit of sleight of hand with the regeneration at the end. I love the fact that Linda with a Y has stayed, because she trusts the Doctor, and that's a great look to Rose. Little character dynamics. Roderick being a Burke downstairs. I mean, he's just he's there to show that not everybody is brave. And it's interesting how important that was to Russell T Davies, because we had the companion Adam who couldn't. The idea that the acts we shouldn't take the acts of bravery that we see for granted, and although there are lots of examples in this series about ordinary, in inverted commas, people showing what human beings are capable of at their best, we so often do what is worst. You can imagine Roderick on Twitter when everybody's saying that a nice thing is nice, going, "Well, actually, I think this bit's terrible," or whatever, because there are always people that will do that. I think there's a great. Is this the bit where he has to Rose's look where Linda does a sort of inane companion line. 22 minutes. Oh, he's so good, Joe Stone Fuse. And then look, that's a really doctorish thing for Eccleston to do. For somebody that wasn't really who didn't really grow up with the Doctor Who as part of his milieu and his part of his thing. That's somebody who instinctively knows how to do Doctor Who. Gosh, and can you imagine this would have been done on a BBC Micro, 20 odd years earlier? Oh, goodness me. Bastic bullets. That's a reference to Revelation of the Daleks, isn't it? Orsini and his smelly squire Bostock have bastic bullets. I'm pretty certain of that. Oh, Linda with a Y, we love you with your hair in bunches and your desire to do this. Oh, yeah, and the Doctor gets a little bit. There's a little suggestion that that he's quite smitten with her, whereas of course, and it's such a, because it's playing with the idea that, because Linda, I think at the moment, is unkillable. Linda is not a killable character, and she does that little bit where she looks at the TARDIS, and there's a suggestion that what's she going to do to show that she's not up to Rose's standard? God, how funny! I'd totally forgotten. the controversy around the fact this most, I mean, that's nothing of a man kissing a man having just kissed a woman, and it sort of parallels the EastEnders thing many years ago, where there was an episode of EastEnders where there's a kiss, I think, between Ian Beale and Cindy, heterosexual kiss, which caused no headlines, and a very innocuous, very chaste kiss between Colin, the gay character, and his boyfriend Barry, and it's not. And the next day, the Sun newspaper had the headline, "It's EastBenders." How far have we come? Well, actually, for some, not that far, because all those years later, that was still headline grabbing. Jenna Russell doesn't get credited as the floor manager in this episode, and I mentioned that to Russell T Davies when I interviewed him for my Who's Round podcast, and instead of coming, he just went, "Oh, we should have had somebody on that because she just got missed out. It was a mistake." Which is the sort of thing that you thought had probably been ironed out by modern television. There are examples in the old series of people being missed off the credits for various reasons. You think, well, with the way we do modern television now. In fact, I think the new series has probably got more examples as people have their eyes on other things. But I'm aware I'm going to do a podcast on people missing off the credits because I suspect only I care, but it does bother me more than it should. Well, I just think actors get so little. I think, we get no holiday pay, no pension. Unless you're hugely successful, I think you're largely seen as a failure. The least we can get is our name on the menu. One little question, says Pete Addison. Is there anything you can say now about the alternative ending with Rose in the Vortex? Was it shot? Does it still exist? I don't think it was shot. I did have a look in the complete history, and it said it was scripted and it was in order to be shot, which I think means they're being a bit coy about going, we don't think it was, but we're not going to commit. But I don't think it was. And Nathan Moore says, how different would this story would have been if they hadn't got the rights to use the Daleks? Well, I can't speak for people that didn't know who the Daleks were, but I remember when the Daleks weren't necessarily coming back. I wasn't that bothered. I was so excited about Doctor Who coming back. I didn't need the Doctor Who, classic Doctor Who had whole large chunks of its history where there weren't Daleks. But then when it was revealed they are coming back, I got unnaturally excited. But for a new audience, they established the big bad in that one episode and brought them back for the finale, and did that effectively with very good writing and an adaptation of an existing design, but good design work. Could they have come up with a monster that that equaled the Daleks? I don't know. I mean, there was talk it was going to be the Toclophane, wasn't it? One would imagine they'd be slightly different to the ones that we got. Oh, the doctor lies to Rose in order to save her. He's so good at pain, isn't he, Eccleston? He's and I think his comedy is slightly sort of gawky and awkward, and I'm not sure. I mean, it's difficult. You can't. He's such a good actor. It's difficult to tell when it's deliberate or not. But so some would say I think he's probably, although he's very funny in the A Word. I don't know. It seemed to me at the time that he was much more comfortable with the hard drama than he was with the comedy. Perhaps he's not as light a comedian as some of the other doctors. He's not perhaps as fluent, and yet the comedy that his doctor does has a slightly detached awkwardness about it that makes it work, because he's a sort of misfit, and he's slightly awkward and off kilter and not quite on everybody's wavelength. So it could just be a very sophisticated acting choice. I'm not judging. It works. It definitely works. Even though, as I say, I do feel when I'm looking at some of it that, as I say, perhaps it doesn't fit him as naturally as the stuff that he really excels at, which is the raw emotion and and the depth, the pain and the suffering that he does very well, and the drama. He's a very intense actor of presence. He was a brilliant piece of casting. That this isn't there something about the hologram as well? It's just superb because it's sort of black and white, and those lines running down it and slightly, and it can't quite coalesce. That's like it's sort of unreachable. It's she can't touch him. It's he's like a missing episode. He's like, he's a telesnap reconstruction of Doctor Who says goodbye to Rose. But it is kind of that. And of course it had to come back to 20th century Earth. 21st century Earth. Oh, that reveals how old you are, Toby. I still think of the 20th century as the modern day. Oh. Yes, and that's what Ian Key says. That moment in Parting of the Ways where the hologram looks at the camera, Rose, amazing. It absolutely is amazing. And that's what Pete Adamson says as well. Pete Adamson's favourite bit of the Parting of the Ways is Eccleston turning his head during the hologram message. It's strangely chilling, bittersweet stuff. Man, I love that story. Yeah, quite right. It is really, really good. I've just realised I think I have another sheet of paper with another message from a Patreon subscriber, so I might have to add that at the end. Sorry, James Gould. Captain Jack's brilliant. Such a good addition, and the fact that he's such a comedy presence, but also a man of action, means that when the Doctor's lying to himself and to us, Jack's there to remind us of the stakes. This was so exciting at the time. Everybody was talking about Doctor Who. Amazing, that transformation in the 13 weeks. I remember before it started. There was a news report, I think, and they interviewed some people on the streets. And this young woman, they said, "Oh, Doctor Who," and she went, "No, never even heard of it." And the idea that people hadn't even heard of it astonished me. It was getting to that point, because there was a time when even people that thought it was rubbish had heard of it. It was part of the national fabric, as it should be. So I think it was rescued just in time too, as well, because I think given another 5 years and it would have been an absence. And I remember before this season, because it's the regeneration, I remember, because sometimes you can always be a bit of an arse. There was a documentary, wasn't there? And it was narrated by David Tennant. And I remember the name coming up with the credits, and I said to because I was riding high and I was quite excited, but I was still, in my head, I was still, well, I know a lot about Doctor Who, even though, I start from scratch here, having had all of my life to try and, to pore over facts about the classic series over and over and over again. I remember saying to my partner at the time, when David Tennant's name appeared at the end, I went, "Oh, yeah, he's going to be the 10th Doctor." I was correct, but it was still an idiotic, posy thing to say. She didn't care either. That was the other thing. So, but yes, so I predicted David Tennant was going to be that. Oh, that was before he was announced. I predicted. Just because he was doing Casanova and he was a Doctor Who fan, and it just seemed like is written in the stars. This touching base is very, very important. It was such a vital part of the whole DNA of Russell T Davies's Doctor Who, and these. Billy Piper was the surprise success story from it coming out of the gates. But how important Jackie and Mickey are to this should not be underestimated. And I don't think I warmed to Mickey particularly early on. And I contend that, and I think Noel Clarke's great. And he was actually in the interviews before it came back. He was like, yeah, I'm a big Doctor Who fan. I love Doctor Who, and he had so much enthusiasm for it, and you really really warmed to him. But I wasn't a great fan of Mickey and Rose, I have to say. I don't know if it was because of what he was given to do. I said to Russell T Davies when I interviewed him that I felt the performance had changed slightly, and Russell wasn't having it. But I think some of that was interviewee to interviewer. He was going, we're this is a positive thing. I'm not going to give you any ground on that. He's a very very lovely man, Russell, but I also think he takes no prisoners, and he wasn't going to let me suggest that that Mickey had changed. But I feel he does, and I love Noel Clarke. But by the end of the series, and he's great in Boomtown. The fact that Mickey goes from being, so maybe it was deliberate, and that that transformation was really really important. But I'm sure I read an interview with Noel Clarke where he said he felt he pitched his performance slightly differently early on. He's great anyway, but I certainly, my warmth towards the character improved and got 100% by the end. This is amazing, and that's just such a great decision. This it turns around that the Daleks moving midriff as well, which I know we've seen in Dalek, but just that directorial or special effects designer choice of going, well, we're not just going to have them all coming in the same direction. We're going to have these ones look there and then twist around. It just adds movement. It adds intent. It's pretty spooky. It's just another of many moments of genius. Yes, by the way, when I'm sort of looking for things to be critical of about this, I think I'm just trying to highlight some of the things that at the time I was thinking, because although I loved this and this exceeded my expectations and it was so amazing Doctor Who being back, my fan brain was on the lookout for things to worry about. So yeah, no, let's get it out there. I think this is amongst the very best of Doctor Who. I think this whole period of Doctor Who is amongst the very best of Doctor Who. But I'm trying from a bit of historical perspective, he said loftily, to try and sum up some of the concerns that I have, because I've always got that little doubt pecking in my brain, that fear that I think the genesis of that was Doctor Who when I was away at boarding school, and Doctor Who was the only sort of island of joy I had when that phone call came through to say it's being taken off the air, which seemed inconceivable. And from then on, Doctor Who was under threat, which it was the only solid thing in my life. It was the only solid thing in my life. And so for the continuation of its existence, it was under threat. And then it coming back, I was terrified of people not liking it, or even worse, of me not liking it. Or even worse, of me liking it and everybody else not liking it. And there is a lesson there about just going with it and not worrying. I heard something wise. I'd like to say it was from a philosopher. I think it is a philosopher, but it's quoted in an episode of The Good Place about not worrying about the past or the future, just the present, because it's the only one you can do anything about. And the past is gone, and the future isn't here yet. The only one you can control is the present. And I think there's not a note to self: live a bit more in the present, because you only appreciate things when they've gone sometimes. That said, I was loving Doctor Who at this point, and I loved the machine guns. So absolutely fantastic, and the fact that you can see the bullets flying, it felt so grown up. And I know you had bullets and stuff in the machine guns in the Pertwee era, but I'd grown up with Davison, where they didn't really have an awful lot of gunfire apart from Resurrection. So that's great. The floor manager is killed. She'll never sing the theme tune to Red Dwarf again. And you've got people, bullets flying in the air, and her hair was flying about because of the impact. So that's so impressive. And then you've got a Mini trying to open the heart of a spaceship inside a police box. And I love that. I love the fact it's a mini. Those little bits of attention, and this is great because it's waiting for. Although they're killing time a little bit here because Rose has to be kept away from the story. None of it is padding because it is all building to a hero moment that's going to come for Jackie in a bit. That's also got loads of good jokes in it, but it's keeping Rose away and it's her frustration, and so there's emotion tied in with the. Oh, and the I've forgotten that the android, they use the android as I only think of the game shows as being in the first episode, and I believe that the android is one of Russell T Davies' favourite jokes. He should be justly proud of it. Joe Joyner is so good. And that's a lovely old. It's a bit like Alien, isn't it? It's the it's the look and Earthshock Part 1. Somebody looking at blips on a screen that means bad news for other people. I mean, poor old Patterson Joseph. He's a fantastic, one of our finest actors. He's sort of stuck downstairs just being an arse. But as I say, but he's playing a very important function, and he does it brilliantly. And isn't that glory? That Joe Joyner's reaction, and the fact that we don't see it, we hear it, so you can do a large scale massacre that is a gut puncher without showing any of it. And she acts it brilliant. She is so good. I love Linda with a Y. I'm not allowed to choose her though, because Jenny already has. Jackie being the mum who cares. Rose knowing about Pete, of course, which we don't actually know about, because that's been planted in front. The whole arc is an overused word, but the whole character development and the stories that everybody has, the amount of detail, not just for plot but for emotion. And this is desperately emotional stuff, but it's earned. Every single bit of it is earned. And Billie Piper had gone from being, it's the bit that always resonated in my one-man show when I said my reaction to Billie Piper being cast was one of absolute fury. She's a pop star. This is ruined Doctor Who, and I was like, oh, before it's even started. And I mean, I ate my words pretty quickly, and by this episode they were fully digested and never to be brought up again. She's so good, and look at Earth being absolutely totaled. And of course you can do this because we don't know that the Doctor's gonna reverse all of this, so you get to have your cake and eat it. And this stuff's great, and I really like the two. It's quite a simple device, having the does he say, do you want to go for a drink afterwards? But he's so charming. I hope he's having I know he's pretty solid work, isn't he, Joe Stone Fewings, but I hope he's having a marvellous career, actually, because he has such a warmth and such a wit, and a sort of hapless charm. And I love that bit between them where she winks, and it's very much, I remember watching V, and there's two characters, and one says, when this is all over, shall we get married? And you go, yeah, and you go, well, one of them's gonna die. But and that was very cheesy, and it was cheesy at the time. That moment I see as slightly different, is that you're aware of the tropes, but you don't know, because Linda, you expect to go one way and comes a different way. I think that the two programmers are a lovely addition and fulfil an important task, and are played. I I think better than characters like that are sometimes played in other shows. And this whole sort of thrown together, the stuff I did like about V, was the underground, rebels holding out, Jerry built. This is very, this is a base under siege. But the fact that it's this set is all these sort of rusty bits of panels all thrown together, and again machine guns, which I don't know why I like machine guns so much, but I do tough. It's a western, a war film, all of that stuff. It appeals to us. I don't know why, but it does. But the fact that it's sort of ordinary people in a short-sleeved shirt and a suit top and all that stuff, and when she celebrates, I got it, she's gonna die. Oh, I think that's so sad. And then he loses it in the way that he does the gun over there, and I think that's, oh gosh, and that's a great I'm a sucker for all of that sort of stuff. I do. It sort of gets me every time as well, and it's just two people without names. Yes, I know he's called David Pavel, but not in the credits. They're male programmer, female programmer. I think, as I said last week, Russell had wanted to do the thing where people we didn't know the names of did extraordinary things, and I think that's important. He comes back to that, doesn't he, in Midnight when the stewardess sacrifices her life, and somebody says, what was she called, and nobody knows. This is such a tense scene, and it's got a Dalek appendage. I did the chase not long ago. I was celebrating the Dalek appendages in that. This is an absolutely fabulous scene, and you go, well, somebody's going to come and rescue Linda because she's Linda, and this is the stroke of genius. Is that you lip read a Dalek without it having lips. You know exactly what it says when that is genius. That is, and that's so horrible. Poor old Linda. That is definitely going to be one of my choices. But then you sort of go, well, okay, Linda's the big death. Surely Captain Jack's going to escape. Because Captain Jack's essentially become a sort of companion, and he was announced early on in the press. So, and I think it's I was surprised by Russell T Davies being so good at the action stuff. I think because I'd seen his Queer as Folk has a cheeky power. I mean, it's also got a strength and an outrage in it, but it's told with such vim and wit, and the Second Coming also, is powerful, but it's also fueled by a sort of anti-establishment. Although he was using God, who's as establishment as you can get, rebelliousness. But I wasn't quite sure I expected him to be so. And why not? Of course, he was brought up on Doctor Who, but his handling of the stuff that appeals to the little kid in me, the actiony stuff is perfect. But I love that Jackie gets the moment with the band which says, "Don't ask how I got it." And you go, "Oh, Jackie." Jackie Tyler is one of the great Doctor Who characters, who you absolutely need. And you sort of don't know where this is going with the heart of the TARDIS. I mean, it's never a good sign when you throw the machine gun away, though, is it, Captain Jack? Because that's it. All you can do now is throw your shoes at them. But he's great, isn't he, John Barrowman? Yeah, I kind of figured that, and I love the way he holds. Oh yes, oh gosh, and I remember looking at my friend John Cooper, who did Time Flight. For this podcast, he was sitting. We looked at each other, and we couldn't believe it. And that camera works great. The way the camera shoots from one to the other, and look at all those Daleks. And this is where you thought, well, this is how the Doctor's going to die. But then you go, but hang on, he's got to defeat the Daleks. And of course, Russell T Davies has to give him the decision. I've forgotten about that. Of course, this is the big moment because the Doctor does blow things up, doesn't he? I mean, and the Doctor doesn't kill people except the odd Ogron, and but I've discussed, I'm sure, to the point of boredom, the fact that yes, we imagine the Doctor as not being somebody who kills except for the times when he does kill, unless you view the Doctor differently to how I do, and there are people who go, no, the Doctor sees what the evil is and he destroys it, and both of those readings are have their errors, and both of those readings are valid. I take the hummus-eating Guardian reading liberal view because we create Doctor Who in our own image. And this is the Doctor. This is the Doctor, of course, that stood by and said about Cassandra. Everybody dies, and I remember thinking, is this a Doctor that kills people? And of course, he's the one that Satsuma's the Sycorax commander in the very next episode. But it needed for this point the Doctor to go, no, I'm not. There is a part that I don't do mass murder even of Daleks. But fortunately for him, Rose has had a look into the heart of the TARDIS, which, unlike Mickey's Mini, where I'm sure if you lifted the hood and looked into it, you just see some wires and an engine, the TARDIS has the crazy side effect of going, if you look into the heart of the TARDIS, you can reset the coordinates and also absorb the time vortex and do miraculous things. But, of course, it's not entirely miraculous things because it comes with a price, which stops it from being a sort of Deus Ex Machina in a way, because if this was just a wave my magic wand and in one bound they're free, we'd have felt very cheated. I think at the time felt a little bit come on, that's a little bit because I think the ending of Boomtown, I'd be like, why is the TARDIS made to do that? All right, because Boomtown's actually a different kind of story, so it needs that sort of ending. All right, fair enough. But then when the same thing happened again 2 episodes later, which of course means that Boomtown has set it up, so it's a clever piece of foreshadowing, and it means that it's legitimate. I still nonetheless felt it a little bit magical at the time. I don't mind it. I don't really mind it so much now, partially because there's a cost. To Jack, who comes alive again, because of course he becomes immortal, which becomes its own curse. But there's a cost. Yes, she does this, but it's not a magic escape, because it costs the Doctor his life, his regeneration. And I think because everything else is so emotionally perfect, and the battles and the story, I think it earns it. And I think she is so good. And it's a clever sleight of hand, because you expect the Doctor to die at the sort of height of battle, and he sort of dies when the battle's over. It's almost like a sort of kick in the teeth, but then becomes celebratory, which was totally unexpected. And good drama is unexpected. Look at her face streaked with tears. Look at him, full of fear and regret. Two better leading actors you couldn't hope for. I was delighted Captain Jack came back alive. And of course we get a kiss, which again, I would have thought would have been the end of the world. And it's not the end of the world at all. And the sort of thing I would have worried about. How do I feel about it? I mean, I grew up with the idea of the Doctor kissing anybody being a really bad idea. But of course, it has its cake and eats it, because it's not a kiss, it's a time vortex suck. He's not tickling her tonsils, he's sucking a time vortex. Ha 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 ha. Lovely effect as well, by the way, and beautiful lighting at the back. And what a hero shot. Doctor. Yeah. and then he blows it out of his mouth, which I suppose you can do if you're Doctor Who. Nice music by Murray Gold as well. That's a great shot, isn't it? Yeah, it is slightly magical, but I think it earns it, and he knows, so he helps to sell it as well. Will I always be as forgiving of endings of some modern Doctor Who? Well, come on, I was thinking about the Brain of Morbius the other day, which ends because there's essentially a board game in the corner that they play that sucks one of the brains out of the other people. The story stops and he goes, "Do you want to play this thing that's over here?" So I think, and of course, Captain Jack is left behind because he has to be, because Rose has to get used to the new Doctor next season. And of course, you can have too much of a good thing, and I think it was important that Captain Jack wasn't permanent. I think because then you look forward to him coming back, and it becomes an occasion when he does. Yeah, I think storytelling is very hard. Telling science fiction stories is very hard, and you paint yourself into corners, and you have to get out of them. And sometimes you do it by very clever placing of jigsaw pieces, and sometimes I think you justify it emotionally, and I think that really works. I find this. I find this episode exciting. I find it moving. I find it sad. I find it scary. I find it funny. I do. I think it's as good as Doctor Who gets. And I also wasn't sure about the sort of the post-story regeneration, but it needs it because he couldn't just collapse, at the climax when the story's just finished and change and that be it. There needed to be some explanation, some reassurance. It definitely needed to be a postscript because, of course, the show hadn't done this. But what a boon it turned out to be, because essentially after the first series, it's going, if we want to, this is here forever. Whereas I think if Eccleston had done 2 or 3 series, I mean, I had friends here, I live in the north, who went, "Oh no, I don't like the idea of the new guy because Doctor Who's Christopher Eccleston and this northern bloke." So the fact that David Tennant came in pretty quickly and then established himself so quickly, I think was in the end did the series a great service. So Eccleston did by going when he did. And Tennant did by establishing himself and becoming, definitive. So, whilst at the time it was the worst thing in the world to read, was Christopher. Just as the show looks like it's being successful, you have to get used to the leading man losing, and there he is. And of course. Then Christopher Eccleston was the bloke that would never come back to Doctor Who, much like Tom Baker was the one after the 5 Doctors that, didn't really do conventions and bits and bobs and things like this, and certainly wouldn't do Big Finish. And then McGann, McGann, he was the movie Doctor. He's not going to do conventions, and then he does conventions and comes back to Doctor Who. But then Eccleston, well, no, he left, and we're not quite sure why he left, and there's obviously some stuff gone on there, but so he's far too cool and scary and hard and northern to do anything like a Doctor Who tie-in from Big Finish, and as I speak, he's just recorded a load of stuff for Big Finish, so they try and every time they try and leave, but they always come back. I remember being furious with myself because I think I pressed stop. I still had a video at this point. I recorded this on VHS. Younger listeners, that's an old thing like papyrus or a stone tablet. And I think I pressed stop, and then there was a sort of recap of loads of clips of the series, and then saying Doctor Who will come back in the Christmas Invasion. But I pressed stop because it was important for me not to have sort of extra junk on. And I've never seen that throw forward to the Christmas Invasion since. So I remember being utterly furious about that. So now, do I choose? I choose 3 things about this and a bonus. Why do I choose? So I have to choose 7 in all for a 2-parter. Oh, whereas for a 1-parter, I'd have chosen 5 things. Yeah, no, so that makes sense. And yet for a 4-part Doctor Who story, I choose 5 things, which is the same length. Oh, I don't know. Doesn't matter. The rules are what they are. I think Jenny is going to choose 3 things and a bonus. So I have to choose 3 things and a bonus, I think. So I'm definitely choosing a Linda or with a Y's death scene, that the silent exterminate out in the vacuum of space. The fact that it involves Linda with a Y, who I can't choose because, well, no, I suppose I could, because Jenny chose the holding the hand out moment. But yeah, the fact that scene involves Linda with a Y, played by, look at I go, Linda with a Y, that's how we know her. It's little touches like that, actually, that are part of the genius. The fact that she's played so brilliantly by Jo Joyner, the fact that she seemed unkillable, the fact that she's been doing, that her role in the episode is so useful on so many different levels, and the fact that she dies, and the fact that the Dalek is silent, the fact that you see the glass shatter and the air, it's just superbly rendered, I would say. That I also would, I think I probably have to choose all those Daleks. I suppose I do love that way that the midriff, the Dalek's facing the other way, and then its head turns and its midriff turns, which is a genius moment. But I think all of that Daleks in space and the Dalek spaceship stuff is really, really brilliantly done, and so exciting. And I also will choose, well, I suppose it's difficult. Am I allowed to choose? Am I allowed to choose the Doctor? Or do I choose a Doctor moment? Yeah. No, yeah, the turning to, yeah, what everybody else has chosen. Eccleston is so good, and I nearly chose the bit where he has the big bit of air duct or whatever in his hand, and he looks at it with sort of inept hope, because it's a great piece of comedy. But the bit where he turns, where the hologram turns, which makes no actual logical sense apart from it's absolutely right, and yeah, why wouldn't he know that he was there? And the camera, it doesn't matter, and the fact that he's in black and white, and the fact that it's shimmering. But yeah, that moment where he turns round, but in that, I also am acknowledging Christopher Eccleston for the brilliant work that he did as Doctor Who. And I think my bonus thing, I've got to mention Joe Ahern, who was such an important director that first year, never returned to the show, and I think gave it a lot of its guts and a lot of its drive, and brought some real credibility to it, because he came with credentials and experience, and I like his series Ultraviolet, actually. Do check that out. It's I'd like to have seen that develop, because I think it's not perfect by any means, but I think had it had a longer life, I think it would have grown into something really, really interesting. And I still think it stands as an interesting piece of telly. Anyway, I could talk about Ultraviolet later. But I think Joe Ahern, and that ties in with all the battle scenes and the the machine guns. I mean, me saying that I like the director is partially me saying I like the machine guns, but I think all of that action stuff he orchestrates so brilliantly. And remember, he's only got he's got far fewer Daleks. Is it 3 or 4 than those that we see? So all of that is done, painstakingly and in stages, and it looks $1 million. It looks, and even now, I think some of the CGI now, we can see the joins where perhaps I couldn't, whatever it is, 15 years ago, but barely, and it doesn't matter. But I only say that because if you can see the joins, I don't think we could. I don't think I did 15 years ago. It looked incredible, and it moved at such a pace, and it's got such an atmosphere. And I think it's tonally, the way it juggles action, adventure, romance. Doctor Who was romance, which works without making it about soapy relationships, because I don't think it is. I think it works it works on a higher level than that. It's really good. It's really good. I really enjoyed revisiting that. Even though I was quite pernickety, but as I say, I think it's because I have to be, whilst I'm accentuating the positive, I think I worry about seeming like a crawler. Oddly, I don't worry about it with old Who, but I worry about seeming... Why do I worry about what people think? Because I do all the time. Anyway, let's not get into that. But... yeah, the idea that because I guess Russell T Davies and Phil Collinson are out there and they're working, it's like, oh, he's just sucking up to those people who work in telly. No, I'm not. I'm genuinely not. I genuinely think it's superb television, and I think so. Maybe that's why I occasionally am pernickety, because I worry about seeming obsequious, and I should stop worrying. Anyway, no, you shouldn't, says somebody. What does Jenny think?
Parting of the Ways. Okay, Toby, so here's my choices for Parting of the Ways. First one, the TARDIS materialising round the Rose and the Dalek Gardener. And after destroying the Dalek in the TARDIS, the Doctor remembers the Time War, and this is the moment that I wanted to sort of talk about. It goes really serious, and he just says, I was there. The war between the Daleks and the Time Lords, with the whole of creation at stake. My people were destroyed, but they took the Daleks with them. I almost thought it was worth it. Now it turns out they died for nothing. So that is just one of those moments where you can see in his eyes, Christopher Eccleston's such a good actor, because you believed him completely that he was seeing the Time War. He was seeing everything that happened, the devastation, and why did the Time Lords have to die, for nothing if the Daleks were there? So that's my first choice.
Oh, that's a good choice, and brilliantly put as well, much more eloquently than I was. And I was talking a bit through that bit, and I'd forgotten, of course. I need to write these things down, because I do love the bit where the Daleks back off when he yells at them. That is a very good bit. Maybe if I'd thought about it, I would have chosen that instead of the CGI Daleks in space. But I like the CGI Daleks in space. I don't care. But yeah, I could have easily chosen that. But I'm glad Jenny did, because she put very well why it works.
My second choice is where the Daleks begin to cut through the door with a torch as Linda watches. The sparks, materialise on the other side of the door, and then more Daleks rise outside the observation window. And she just knows that this is the end, this is it. And the Daleks shut the glass, and it exposes Linda to the vacuum of space, and it just kills her. And you can just hear a scream. The Doctor hears a scream over the communicator, and you think, how could that happen? And he couldn't save her, and he knew it. And I did not want her to die. I wanted her to be a companion. So that was a bit of a moment for me. I didn't want Linda with a Y to go. So that's the second one.
Oh, so I've got a point, because Jenny and I chose the same thing. Well, a rare victory for me there. I think it will probably be short-lived.
Third one. Rose is revealed as the TARDIS doors fly open, bathing the room in the light of the vortex. She's just seen more than anyone should ever see in the universe. And the doctor's just horrified. You can see he's just totally horrified by it. And the Emperor Dalek just says, "You can't hurt me, I'm immortal." And Rose just says, "You're tiny. I can see the whole of time and space, every single atom of your existence, and I divide them." And she disintegrates the Dalek, just saying, "Everything must come to dust, all things, everything dies." What a moment. You're thinking to yourself, her eyes are just yellow and she's just absorbed everything. And you're thinking, how can she possibly survive that? She'd just be a total mess, wouldn't she? So, that's my next moment.
I love the way Jenny's explained that, because I am slightly reserved about the godlike thing. I was things that seem slightly magical, I always take a slight step back from. Even if maybe she just stepped out and gone, I have been augmented by tachyonics, I'd have gone, I don't know what tachyonics is, but do you know what I mean? I'd have, So I'm, but that's just a personal taste thing. I'm slightly less moved. I'm slightly ambivalent about sort of godlike ethereal stuff and bathed in light and all of that, which seems a bit fantastical to me, even though, as I've just explained, I think it earns it, and I think it does it well. And I actually think Jenny has advocated for it far more effectively and made me maybe reconsider a little bit, because that idea of, yes, the puffed up Dalek and the great powerful baddie alien thing being actually in time a speck of dust is an extraordinarily powerful thing. And a very important message as well, that puts everybody in their place a little bit. Every puffed up megalomaniac, every bully, every and also says to us about don't sweat the small stuff, because enjoy the bigger picture sometimes, because everything's so much bigger and so much better, as a Doctor Who character says a little bit later. So yeah, thanks, Jenny. You've made me sort of I think your advocacy plays to what that's really about, rather than perhaps what my preconceptions and my pre-programming receives that as. Yeah, good.
And my bonus moment is, obviously, I've got to choose this. It's got to be the regeneration scene. So, the Doctor's speech, "Rose, before I go, I just want to tell you, you were fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. And do you know what? So was I." What a moment. It would have been the perfect ending if the series had come to its final moments. That message is just glorious. So those are my moments, and thank you for asking me, Toby. Loved it. Take care.
Oh, take care, Jenny. Isn't Jenny fantastic? Follow her, Jenny at BlueBox99 online. In a world, I mean, Doctor Who fandom is full of men of a certain age who are cynical smartasses. Hello, and it's also full of some quite young, angry people as well, I think. Also, some very, very creative and lovely young people too. But I never fail to be enthused and just happy whenever Jenny posts anything, because her enthusiasm is unfettered. I don't think she's got a cynical bone in her body, and I think she leads by example by conducting herself in a joyous, kind, celebratory, and enthusiastic way. And I wish I was more consistently like that, which is why I asked her to do this, because I knew she would inject exactly the right air of positivity into it, and I'm grateful to her for doing it. So do follow Jenny at BlueBox99 on Twitter.
He's also very kindly said that I could plug a few things. So I love writing, and I've written for a charity book called The Curse of Fanfic, and that's available via Obverse Books. On Twitter it's at Obverse Books, and it's raising money for Parkinson's UK, so well worth a look at that. The Minister of Chance is also an audio drama that I was involved in 2013, and it's by Dan Freeman, and the weekly episodes are available on a free podcast if you want to have a look at that. So that's at The Minister of Chance and at Sage of the Waves. That's Dan Freeman's Twitter account if you want to follow him. It's well worth following. And there's also an audio drama coming out called Dark Dimension. So that's hashtag Dark Dimension on Twitter. Well worth a look. It's a spin-off of Doctor Who. And there's lots of like people involved in that's on Twitter, and it's just going to be good fun. So it's well worth a look. So those are my plugs. So thank you, Toby.
Gosh, being a Doctor Who fan at that time was amazing. I still thrill to the transformation in just how I felt about life, actually, over that 13 weeks. I mean, yes, there was the excitement building up, and it was terribly exciting, all of that. So it was more than that 13 weeks. But that series unfolding, I mean, God, I remember cycling to the Comedy Store and thinking, I better not come off my bike tonight because I don't want to, because I don't want to miss Doctor. I don't want to miss Doctor Who. I just felt that everything was sort of happening right, and this promised that this wasn't going to be a one-off. The series was hugely successful. It had a couple of stumbling blocks, notably the exit of its leading man. But they said, oh, no. This was fantastic, but there's more to come. And by goodness, there's been plenty more. And what a ride it's been. And of course, without that series being as successful, I don't think I'd have done a one-man show about Doctor Who. And so we wouldn't be doing this. So I'm not saying that's a reason to celebrate it, but it gets me to the end of this podcast. There wouldn't be this without that. So that might not be one of the best things that it has spawned, but it's nonetheless, it means that those episodes live on in all sorts of different ways. Well, look, it's time for us to part ways. That has been fantastic, and I will see you next time. Take care. Thank you ever so much for listening to Happy Times and Places, which is presented by me, Toby Haydock, and my special guest, Jenny at BlueBox99, who can be found on Twitter at, you've guessed it, Jenny at BlueBox99. I'm grateful to her and to the patrons who make these podcasts possible, and they include Tim Arding, David, Nigel Brumley, Jenny at BlueBox99, she's everywhere, Paul Cook, Richard Chalk, Rob Dawson, Grant Davidson, John Deere, Chris Dunford-Kelk, Paul Dunn, Jason Gorman, Siobhan Galichon, Chris Hyam, Ian Key, Joe Llewellyn, Ian K. McLachlan, Gavin McLean, Philip Marsh, Nathan Martin, Kevin Murdoch, Graham Knott, Adam Parker, Barry Platt, Risto Matti Sorillo, Frank Shales, David Trainier, Peter Adamson, Andrew and Lisa, Kat Armitage, John Arnold, Kevin Ashelford, Lute Atkins, and James Bell. The music is by David Gates, and the artwork by Dylan Patterson. If you would like to add your name to those names, you can do so by becoming a patron of Toby Haydock's Time Travels. Patrons get 3 releases a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Oh, and a bonus one on Tuesdays that I haven't counted there because it's pictures of my dog. But actually, they are more popular amongst some people than anything that I produce. And all he does is look at a camera and scamper about. But there we go. But no, the main attraction, supposedly, is advance releases of Happy Times and Places. You get these 6 months ahead of the general public. And also of Too Much Information and Indefinable Magic, which are generally a month in advance. They've got a slightly less regular release pattern depending on my work, inclination, inspiration, and all sorts of other factors that were I working for a corporation that had an infrastructure and a regular wage, I would be perhaps more able to timetable myself effectively. But as it's me at home doing what I can, it's a bit topsy-turvy. However, I do make sure patrons get 3 releases a week, and as I say, you are still in advance for Indefinable Magic and Far Too Much Information. Too Much Information, Far Too Much Information. I'm getting my head of myself. If you've never heard of that, it's because you're not a patron, because that is a patron-exclusive podcast. So Far Too Much Information is for patrons only, as are monthly AMAs and various other little bits and bobs. So that's patreon.com/Toby Haydock for as little as £3 a month. Tiers go all the way up to, a gazillion. They don't, but I mean, if you were, I'm not going to let protocol stop me from getting a gazillion pounds, should that be the amount you want to pay me monthly. My goodness, you must be doing well. But you go all the way up to different tiers, but even the lowest tier gets all of the audio and video content, all the stuff. There are funny little other bits and bobs as you go up, but not much. It's pretty much, pay what you can, and you get anything that's really of any value at that lowest tier. And you get 10% off even the lowest tier if you sign up for a year in one go. So that's so I've got you for 12 months, but you get 10% off that, so 2 months are effectively free, really. And if you can't do that or don't want to, and don't fancy a monthly commitment thing, or purse strings are tight because we're in the grip of a recession and the world is going mad and everything's rotten. I'm well aware of that, which is why I try to be positive on these things. Least I can do is inject a little bit of positivity into what's coming into your ears. You can go to ko-fi.com/Toby Haydock, and that's a way of just chucking some pennies into my hat as you stroll past. It's like a tip. You don't sadly get any bonuses for that apart from my gratitude. I really am very grateful. It's a strange way of doing things these days, where people like me have to sort of come cap in hand, and believe me, I do feel very awkward doing it. But I hope I'm making stuff that people like, and the entertainment landscape means that there are little islands where I can do whatever this is, and there are some people that want it. And if you're among those people, I am very, very grateful to you for listening. So, and I expect nothing. If you're listening and these give you joy, then I am delighted. But if they do give you joy, maybe you could go to iTunes, Podbean, Spotify, anywhere online where you can rate these 5 stars, and please do so, and maybe leave a couple of lines of review. That really helps these to be made visible and to make other people who might not be aware of Toby Haydock's time travels. And if you could like and subscribe, I don't even know how you do that, but if you could do that, that all helps tweak my algorithms so they're lovely and pert. You can follow me on social media on Twitter at Toby Haydock, TobyHadoke, and these podcasts have their own feed, which is free from all my other interests. There aren't many, but plugging of comedy gigs and making the occasional pithy comment at Haydock Podcasts. That's just stuff about these particular releases. And I have a Facebook page. It's I hate the word fan page. That's 2 words. I hate the word. I mean, both words are fine on their own, but when used together and applied to me, I find it a little bit awkward. But it's simply a way of me having a presence on Facebook. Because I was getting so many people asking to be friends on my personal page, I've set up a fan page, which is still managed by me. I don't have people, but it means that I can separate work from home stuff, which I think is healthy and right and proper. So if you don't know me, but you want to know about my work and want to follow the stuff that I'm doing, please follow, whatever it is you do, drool on my fan page on Facebook as well. Well, obviously, let's not ignore the fact that at the beginning of this I had to draw attention to the fact that a couple of the cast members of this story have been through the newspapers since I recorded the main part of the commentary, and, not for great reasons. I'm not going to comment further on that, but it's interesting to note how quickly our view in the context of Doctor Who stories and the people in them changed, because also, of course, whilst I was commentating on this particular story, which was, I think, during the lockdown, Russell T Davies was nowhere near, as far as anybody knew, coming back to Doctor Who. I think he actually was in terms of real life, but he wasn't telling anybody or any of the great unwashed like me and anybody I know. But yes, the idea that Russell would be coming back to Doctor Who, if you'd even mooted it, then I'd have gone, "Oh, you're absolutely mad." That's like when the tabloids go, "Billy Piper is the next Doctor," because basically they hear Doctor Who, they want to write a story, and they go, "Who's associated with Doctor Who?" Yes, Billy Piper. She'll be Doctor Who. It's a bit like actually when Doctor Who comes back and there's a character in it called Rose, and people automatically goes, "Well, that must be Rose Tyler because nobody else could possibly have the same Christian name as somebody else anywhere ever." Ha ha ha. Anyway, yes. So how exciting that as I record this, Russell T Davies is coming back to Doctor Who, which maybe hopefully this podcast has whetted your appetite for. I'm certainly very, very excited. As I say, it wasn't something I'd ever even considered. But during lockdown, watching a lot of those Russell T Davies episodes again, I got hugely nostalgic, and I think I felt, well, no, because I loved Doctor Who at the time, but looking back, it was like, I don't think we realised just how good we'd got it, even though it was amazing and wonderful being a Doctor Who fan. But that's what nostalgia does. We did realise at the time how good it was. Doctor Who was riding high, and it was great to be a Doctor Who fan, and it was so terribly, terribly exciting. But I think there's a possibility for that to happen again, even though the televisual landscape is very different. And I think these joys and all that excitement and all those opportunities will manifest themselves in different ways. All I'm saying is I'm recording this on a wet afternoon when I was going to be in the garden getting a bit of exercise and getting some oxygen into my lungs, but the rain is pouring. It's a bit dreary, but I have a song in my heart and a spring in my step because Doctor Who is, it's for a show that, obviously, Parting of the Ways, Bad Wolf. It was the end of, that first surge of reinvigoration and starting from scratch and oh gosh, all of that excitement. But of course, nearly 20 years in, we're spoilt, and a lot of that initial excitement has worn off, and familiarity breeds contempt, and we don't know how lucky we are, and all of those things. Well, it seems to me, it feels to me like spring is in the air. It is outside as I record this. Spring is in the air, and the green shoots of Doctor Who are visible, and I cannot wait to see it bloom once more.